Welcome to this video. This is your instructor Adam Askanfu from supersqa.com. This video is part of courses related to Python and QA automation. Check out the description below for more detail and some super deals. And don't forget to smash the like and subscribe buttons. In this video, we're going to talk about Python virtual environments, what they are and how to use them. So Python virtual environments are a way to isolate different projects. It's a way to have multiple versions of different libraries running at the same time on your machine. If you don't use virtual environment, if you download one version of a Python library, some library for example requests or Selenium, right? And now you want to use a different version of the same library, you're going to have to overwrite the other one, the first one, right? And if you work on two different projects and the two different projects depend on different versions of the library, then you're going to be stuck. So what virtual environments would allow you to do is have its own isolated environment, as many as you want, and on each environment you're going to install whatever versions of dependencies you want. It's very, very, very useful. For example, you would, like right now I'm working on a project, right, and it's using some version of a library, and a year from now I want to work on a different project and I want to use the latest version of the library. So what do? If I don't have a virtual environment, then I'm going to have to go to my old project and make sure the old projects work with the newer version, and you never really have time to do that. So when you have a virtual environment, you can install whatever versions you want. Also, when something new comes out and you want to test it out without actually messing up your environment, you create a virtual environment and you install the latest version of whatever you're trying to work on. So this slide here is just a demo of what a virtual environment would look like. So when you are in a virtual environment, it's going to say the name of the virtual environment. For in this case, VNV1 is a virtual environment, VNV2 is the virtual environment. The name, that's just whatever name I gave it when I create the virtual environment. And it will change the command prompt. You will put this parenthesis. It's the same thing for Windows as well as for Mac. And if you just pip freeze, if you don't know that command, it just shows you a list of whatever packages you have installed. So if you were to run in that command, you will see in one environment I've installed Selenium 3, Flask 1.1. In another environment I installed Selenium 4. Selenium 4 just came out, so this is a really good example of if you want to try out something that just came out without actually having to corrupt your environment. And I have Flask 0.09 on this one. So I have different versions of libraries running on my machine at the same time. Also, you can specify which version of Python to use to create the virtual environment. So in this case, my first virtual environment is using Python 3. The second virtual environment is using Python 2. And we're going to see how to do that. All right. So in order to create virtual environments, you need some kind of tool. And there's a bunch of tools out there. If you Google how to create virtual environments, you're going to see too much information and you might get a little bit of confused unless you just go use the first one. The most popular in my opinion was Virtual Environment Wrapper. It's pretty awesome library. It makes working with virtual environments a little bit easier. I've used it for the longest time, but now I moved on to Virtual ENV. That's my favorite one now. VNV is new. It came with Python 3 and it only works for Python 3. You don't get to specify what version of Python to use when you're creating the virtual environment. You can update it later on, but not right when you create the virtual environment. So my favorite one is Virtual ENV. And for that reason, this tutorial is going to be focused on that. But the concept of using virtual environments is the same. It's just how you create it is going to be different depending on which tool you use. All right, so you do need to install Virtual ENV. So do pip install Virtual ENV and that will install the latest one. You can use either the pip that came with Python 2 or the pip that came with Python 3. It doesn't really matter. The package is going to work either way. So once you install Virtual ENV, the way you create the virtual environment is, the virtual environment is going to be a folder. It's going to be a folder. Inside of the folder is going to have Python itself plus all the dependencies, right? So you do Virtual ENV and you give it a path. You can give it a full path, or you can just go to wherever you want to create the virtual environment and then just give it a name of a folder and it will create that folder. So some people would have a folder somewhere in their home directory called virtual environments and they will create every virtual environment in there. And some people will create each individual virtual environment on each project. For me, I do the second one. And for every project I work on, I create the virtual environment within that project. So for me, it's super easy to activate it and know what it is. All right, so when you do this the way I have it on the first step, you just do virtual env and the name of your virtual environment is going to use the default Python version. Whatever, if you have Python 2 as your default, it's going to create the virtual environment with Python 2. If you have Python 3 as the default, it's going to create the virtual environment with Python 3. But you can specify exactly which version of Python you want to use by doing virtual env -- python equals the path to your Python interpreter. Okay, the path to the Python interpreter and the name of your, the same thing I described, the name of your virtual environment, the one you want to create, is going to create a folder with that name. All right, so you would need to do which Python, or if you're on Windows, where Python, to figure out the path of your Python, or which Python 3, and then copy paste that into here. So whatever you provide here is going to be the version of Python that the virtual environment is going to use. This is very important. All right, so to activate it, now running this command is going to create it. You're going to see a new folder being created, and then you need to activate it to be in. You need to get into the virtual environment, so whatever you install is going to be within the virtual environment. So on a Mac, you just do source, the name of the folder that you specified when you created it, and bin activate. All you do is run this command and it's going to activate, and when it gets activated, you're going to see something like this with a bracket and the name of your virtual env. All right, on a Windows, you just run a bat file. So when this folder got created, inside of it there is subfolder scripts. Under scripts there's a bunch of files, and activate that bat. So you just want to run that, and the same thing will happen. You will be inside of the virtual environment. All right, so like I said, right when you activate it, the name of your environment is going to come prior to the prompt. And to get out of the virtual environment, all you got to do is type deactivate, and you'll be out of the virtual environment. This is the same command either you're on a Mac or on a Windows. This is an actual screenshot of just creating the virtual environment. This is the command I showed you, virtual env -- python, and the full Python. I did which Python, it gave me the path, and I give it a name. I call it VNV. Usually I put VNV, my project name, and I put a 3 or a 2 at the end, depending on Python 2, Python 3, to remind myself. The same exact thing. If I want to do with Python 2, I give it the path of Python 2. So once you're inside of the environment, if you do the version, it's going to show you which version it is. Or if I do which Python, while I'm inside of the Python, the virtual environment, see the Python is going to give me is the one that's in the virtual environment. This is key. Technically in the backend, what it's doing is adding the path, it's adding this folder into your system path. So when you do which Python, when it's trying to execute Python, it's going to stop when it finds it first, and the first one it's going to find is going to be the one you just installed. That's really how it's doing it. It's modifying the path. All right, on the same thing on Windows, literally the same exact command, but right after it's created, there is folders in there. There's a lib folder which has the standard library and everything, and then the scripts folder. And if you dig deeper under the scripts folder, there's a bunch of things including pip and all that, but activate that bat is the one you want to run, so you will activate the virtual environment. All right, and this is basically showing you the same thing. In Mac, it creates the lib and the bin. So the bin is almost like the equivalent of the script in Windows, and this activate file in there. So one key, something you don't see in most tutorials, is you can use the virtual environment version of your Python without activating the virtual environment. All you have to do is just use that full path. See, in the previous slide, I showed you when you're inside of the virtual environment and you do which Python, it's going to give you a path to the Python version of your environment. So you can just use this whole path when you run in a script, and it's going to be using that version. So whatever libraries you installed in there is going to use it. So you just put the full path of your Python interpreter and your Python script. This way, without even activating the virtual environment, you can execute scripts. And it's going to be very useful when you're running scripts on a schedule, like on a cron or on Jenkins, when you don't get a chance to activate the virtual environment. Otherwise, you would need to write scripts that will activate virtual environment, then run the Python script. But instead of doing that, you can just use the full paths of the virtual environment Python and run your script. All right, this is a little neat trick and it's very useful. At first I didn't know about this, and I was writing scripts to activate virtual environments all the time, but this will save you a lot of time. All right, so this is basically all there is to virtual environments. I mean, you can get into a lot more details, but in order to use it and benefit from it, this is all you need to know. Thank you very much.